Part 85. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 841. Xiejin never thought of himself as a gentleman. You use different methods to deal with different people. Although people are born with different status, fate is unpredictable. The cause you planted yesterday, the result you taste today, everything is your own fault. Besides, if you fail one day, it is your own fate. If you enjoy all the glory and wealth, you can naturally bear the suffering of disasters. It's a night close to the full moon, and the moon is really bright and clear. Xiejin stood beside Xianyu and Yao. The fall of Nanyu is known to the world. This is also the best New Year's gift to the kings of various countries. I wonder if they can live in peace this new year. Xianyu and Yao tilted his head and glanced at him. It's enough for us to live in peace, why should others care about him? Yao is right. Xiejin smiled and stretched out his hand to hook his finger. It's enough for us to live well. The more uneasy the kings and dignitaries of other countries are, the more stable the world will be. If they are all as stupid and arrogant as the emperor of Nanyu, I'm afraid the world will really be in chaos. Xiejin Xianyu and Yao suddenly remembered something, turned his head and looked at Xiejin, frowning slightly. The master ordered you to send food and grass, but you stayed here for so long, didn't it delay your business in the court? Xiejin looked at him, his eyes were quite subtle. Yao, your late coming concerns are not too late. Xianyu and Yao was silent. Don't worry, Xiejin patted his shoulder. Before I came, I had already dealt with the important matters of the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Revenue, and arranged several capable and reliable subordinates to help me keep an eye on them. Don't worry. You two are good brothers. I don't think I should disturb you. Mo Ling'an walked over leisurely, and every time he saw the two of them, he would never forget to tease them. Am I here at the wrong time? Xiejin glanced at him. You still know? I know, but I have something important to say, so I can only be tactless. Mo Ling'an said calmly. You camp here tonight. I have something else to do, so I won't stay here with you. Leave now. Xianyu and Yao frowned. Can't we hurry on tomorrow morning? People in our line of work usually act at night. Mo Ling'an said. Prince Yao probably doesn't understand. Xianyu and Yao was silent. Their line of work? Which line of work? If you don't know, you might think you're a flower thief. Xiejin sneered. A dark and windy night, you're here to visit my boudoir. A dark and windy night is a murderous night. Mo Ling'an corrected. Sure enough, a playboy's mind is full of beauty. Prince Yao should be careful. His current affectionate attitude is all fake. He might return to his true nature at any time. Xiejin put his arm around Xianyu and Yao's shoulder. Yao and I have a relationship as strong as gold and trust as deep as the sea. No matter how you try to sow discord, it won't work. Mo Ling'an was speechless. He really admired Xiejin's thick skin. Sure enough, no one could match Xiejin in terms of shamelessness. I'm leaving. He waved his hand. No need to see me off. Xiejin and Xianyu and Yao didn't really see him off. They just stood on the city wall and watched him ride away quietly. Just like when they came, 3 people and 3 horses, carrying a thin bag with 2 simple changes of clothes and some silver coins, nothing else. Even the token of identity was carried with them. Just like that, they came freely and left calmly. I just forgot to tell him that he should find a suitable woman to get married earlier. Xiejin frowned. Lord Mo is still waiting to hold his grandson. Xianyu and Yao said, when fate comes, we will get married naturally. Why rush? It's not that I'm anxious, but Lord Mo is always worried that he is doing bad things outside. What if he is killed one day, and the Mo family can't even leave an heir? What a pity. Xianyu and Yao was silent, not knowing what to say. To be honest, even now he doesn't know what exactly Mo Ling'an is responsible for. Intelligence gathering is one of the responsibilities, but what about the others? He is not in the imperial capital all year round, and he rarely goes home. The time he spends in the imperial capital every year is far less than the time he spends running around outside. What has he been doing for so long? However, this was not within his scope of responsibility, so Xian Yuanyao would not ask. He only said, "Parents are so pitiful. Mo Lingen should actually let his father know something, even if he cannot tell everything, at least he should let his father know that what he did was not dangerous, and the Lord would not kill him to silence him. Only in this way can the old father's worries be put to rest." Xiejin said, "Yao Yao is right. I have already told Lord Mo about it before." Xian Yuanyao hummed and said nothing more. He just stood quietly on the city wall, watching the imperial city that once symbolized power and prosperity being destroyed day and night. Some melancholy passed through his heart. Life and death and glory are just passing clouds. The ancestors of Nanyu who conquered the country hundreds of years ago probably did not expect that Nanyu would announce its demise in such a way. Most of the emperors who established the empires in the past dynasties were brave and powerful, while those who destroyed the century-old foundations were all foolish and ignorant descendants. From this, it can be seen that the inheritance of the empire by having many sons and grandsons is not necessarily a good thing. Too many sons and grandsons are worthless, and the father cannot discipline them personally, even occasional inquiries are considered to be concerned. The concubines in the harem fight with each other and are deceitful. The princes grew up in such an environment. The first thing they learned was intrigue and fratricide. The people of the world can never be put first in their hearts. Is the emperor's 3 palaces and 6 courtyards for the continuation of his offspring, or is it to find a legitimate excuse for his own romantic and lustful nature? Xian Yuanyao frowned slightly. Since ancient times, the more offspring the emperor has, the more people have died in the fight for the throne. Those who fight fiercely for the throne rarely have a good end. After all, the first thing the new emperor does after taking office is to settle accounts and clean up opponents, and even implicate many families behind them and destroy them overnight. Therefore, the princes who failed in the fight for the throne often lamented that they would not be born in the emperor's family in the next life, and those who ascended to the throne shouted that it was lonely at the top. But every time the throne changed, they still risked their lives to fight, and no one was merciful at all. Yao Yao's question is too sharp, I don't know how to answer it. Xiejin smiled lightly. Those who try their best to sit on the position of the emperor have only 2 purposes. One is to show their ambitions and benefit the people of the world, and the other is to satisfy their own selfish desires and satisfy everything they want: power, beauty, wealth. It's always either the former or the latter, and everyone knows that a selfless and desireless emperor has not appeared yet. After the war, return to the imperial capital immediately. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 842. The war in South Vietnam was over, and even if the army rushed back immediately, it would not be in time for the New Year's Eve, so Xian Yuanyao stayed for a few more days. In addition to the South Vietnamese emperor, concubines, and ministers who had been detained, he also arranged for various generals he led people to patrol the city and spent enough time to have a comprehensive understanding of the styles of some officials. The treacherous and corrupt officials who were so evil that there was no cure for them were dragged directly to Kashikau and killed in front of the South Vietnamese people. Upright but low-ranking officials, after investigation and deliberation, release a few, mainly officials with simple and innocent family backgrounds. The total number of the whole family does not exceed 10 people, plus a few slaves. After release, there is no need to worry about causing trouble. After all, even if you have the heart, you don't have the strength. The released officials are temporarily serving as local officials in South Vietnam under the supervision of the Obsidian Army. Until the imperial city has a real person in charge, the people can turn to these impartial officials if they have complaints or lawsuits. Of course, all their actions must be carried out under the eyes of the Obsidian Army, and they should not do things they should not do, otherwise they will die. Regarding the appointment and responsibilities of officials, Siejin did come up with several feasible ideas. He was a cunning fox, thoughtful, and was Xian Yuanyao's right-hand man in the South Vietnam incident. With him, Xian Yuanyao can worry a lot less. In addition to officials, the people who are facing the sudden danger of annihilation also need to be comforted. Xian Yuanyao has formulated strict military regulations, strictly prohibiting anyone from harassing the people, and does not allow any rape of women and property of the people. If there is any violators will be punished with a military baton starting at 80. The generals passed on his orders, reminded and warned him again and again, and sternly prohibited them. The Zhejiao people kept the rules firmly in mind. Originally, the military regulations of the Black Obsidian Army and the Golden Armor Army were relatively strict, and the chance of ordinary bad things happening was less. But now that they have won a great victory, Xian Yuanyao is still worried that someone in the army will be carried away by the victory, leading to his own behavior to discredit the entire army. Image. On the 14th day of the 12th lunar month, after 6 consecutive days of rectification and resettlement, the situation in South Vietnam temporarily stabilized, and Xian Yuanyao decided to return to Beijing. Yao Yao Siejing came over with a letter. The Lord has written that King Leng and Queen of South Vietnam do not need to be held accountable, and they do not need to be taken to the imperial capital. They can be freed. Xian Yuanyao frowned. King Leng. Siejin looked at him silently. Has Yao Yao forgotten this person? Xian Yuanyao felt a little guilty. I just had them trapped in Prince Leng's mansion. I have really ignored them these 2 days. Come on, come with me to have a look. Siejin nodded, followed him out of the palace, and rode straight to Prince Leng's mansion. King Leng and the Queen of South Vietnam were pulling weeds in the yard. After walking through the front yard and onto the corridor, Xian Yuanyao and Siejin slowed down and looked at the 2 busy and dusty people in the wide courtyard. They were silent for a long time. A large area of weeds has been uprooted in other parts of the palace. Of course, there are still more places full of weeds. Even though Prince Leng has been out of power for many years, Prince Leng's residence where he lives occupies a very large area. If there are no servants to take care of him, with just the 2 of them, I'm afraid that these winter grasses haven't been cleared away yet, and fresh green spring grass will grow again next spring. Xian Yuanyao came to Prince Leng's mansion mainly because he wanted to see the legendary King Leng and Queen. When he saw these 2 people in front of him, he thought for a moment that he was in the wrong place. General Xian Yuan King Leng turned around and saw the 2 people standing on the pavilion. He was silent for a moment, then threw away the grass in his hand, stood up and greeted, I have long admired your name. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. Prince Leng has lived in the palace for a long time. I heard that he can't even get out of the gate. How can he admire my general's name for so long? Siejing curled his lips and smiled. It was a slip of the tongue. King Leng knew that he could correct his mistakes and promptly changed his words, nice to meet you. This general destroyed the enemy of South Vietnam, and you actually said you'd like to meet me. Siejing had to remind him, Yao Yao, these are just polite words, you don't have to be serious. Xian Yuanyao glanced at him and said nothing. The Emperor of South Vietnam is also my enemy, King Leng said indifferently, you destroyed my enemy's country for me and took away my enemy's kingdom. Of course I should thank you, but after all, I am also a descendant of the non-royal family. Saying thank you seems a little bit. I have forgotten my ancestors and can only say that I am happy to meet you. This explanation is quite reasonable. Xian Yuanyao nodded slowly, do you want to leave here? King Leng was silent for a moment, will you let us go? If you were to be imprisoned here according to the general's wishes, of course, unlike the previous imprisonment, I will give you relative freedom, Xian Yuanyao said lightly, but my regent has an order, if you want to leave here, I can let you go, as long as you 2 no longer have any thoughts of restoring the country. Although it is impossible to truly restore the country, it will create unnecessary trouble for them and ruin their mood. Restore the country, Queen Yang stood up and walked to King Leng's side, smiling sarcastically. I have been planning for so many years, and finally managed to unseat the emperor. I have become a sinner of South Vietnam. I am exhausted mentally and physically. I only want stability. After spending the rest of his life, who still has the energy to plan for the restoration of the country? They have wasted too much time. In the best years, one was trapped in the palace and the other was trapped in the palace. How much time and energy were wasted? In the remaining decades, they just wanted to live a good life and had no time to think about those things. Unrealistic things. In that case, you are free from now on. Xian Yuanyao said this and turned to leave. If you two don't plan to live here, you don't have to weed the weeds in the garden yourself. Be careful not to rub your hands. Empress Yang didn't say anything, but just spread her hands silently. As expected, several blisters had formed on her white and delicate palms. Will you regret it? King Leng asked her in a low voice, his eyes falling on her hands. If we leave here, we will have to wander around the world in the future. How can I regret the path I chose? Queen Yang smiled calmly. After being a queen for more than 10 years, I don't think wealth and glory are that important. Maybe I am more suitable for a life of farming and weaving, and being the most ordinary working class. Paused. Food, clothing, housing and transportation all require money. I have saved some money in those years, which should be enough for us to live for the rest of our lives. King Leng was silent for a moment. Then won't I have to eat soft rice? Queen Yang raised her eyebrows. You don't like it? This king has his own pride, and ordinary soft rice will definitely be disdainful. King Leng's tone softened a little, but you can eat soft rice. After the words fell, the two looked at each other and smiled. The hardships and bitterness of these years were gone with the wind at this moment. All the hatred, hostility and unwillingness disappeared with the demise of South Vietnam, and they would no longer recall them for the rest of their lives. There is not much good time left, so there is no need to continue to worry about it. In the future, they should put aside all the misfortunes of the past and try their best to make up for the loss of each other during those years. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 843. Empress Yang's brother Yang Kuaju was released. No one in the Yang family was held accountable, and Xian Yuanyao let them go free. On the 16th day of the 12th lunar month, Xian Yuanyao and Siejin returned to Dongling with 10,000 cavalry. Arrangements were made for several confidant generals. Yu Fan and An Yi from the Obsidian Army stayed to guard the South Vietnamese capital, and at the same time recruited South Vietnamese soldiers and horses. They were ordered to select some elites with good physical fitness for reorganization and training, while those who were lazy were sent home directly to become ordinary South Vietnamese citizens and did not need to join the army again. Originally, there were 100,000 troops stationed in the east and west capital plus 60,000 troops in the imperial city of South Vietnam. After the integration, only 50,000 troops were left, and all the others were disbanded. One was to save food and grass, and the other was to prevent the army from gathering and causing chaos. The situation in South Vietnam was stabilized. In order to speed up the journey, Xian Yuanyao put all the South Vietnamese monarchs and ministers into prison cars, and fast horses with strong physical strength were tied to the front of the cars. His cavalry did not have infantry to slow them down, so they naturally did not want to let a few prisoners delay their journey. However, in this way, the people trapped in the prison car would have to suffer. Their whole bodies were trapped in the car, with only one bullet exposed. In addition to being unable to stretch his head and body, the prison car was bumpy and uncomfortable when accelerating, and he had to endure the cold wind in winter. The howling and raging cold wind poured into the prison car, only making the faces of these pampered nobles who had never suffered any pain turn pale and colorless from the cold. Coupled with the physical pain, they were really tortured to death. Fortunately, we arrived at Shuashan before New Year's Eve, and the army took a short rest. Several envoys who were trapped in Shuashan were shackled and put into a prison car, ready to be taken to Dongling. Ming Zi, who was good at evil ways, was pierced through the chest with Xian Yuanyao's sword and died on the spot. This ended the First World War in South Vietnam. News came from the Huainan border gate that the South Vietnamese General Du Nguyen had not received the order from the imperial capital and remained stationary. When the news of the country's subjugation reached the border gate, Du Nguyen, not knowing whether he was angry or ashamed, committed suicide and died for his country. The troops at the border are leaderless and almost dispersed. The army guarding the border is actually not weak. However, the royal family is the supreme ruler of the entire country, and the emperor is their loyal master. Now that the country has been destroyed and the king has been captured, all the powerful people are in their hands. The civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty also became prisoners, and these soldiers suddenly lost their backbone. They did nothing and suddenly became slaves of the subjugated country. Such a blow was enough to make the strongest people lose their fighting spirit, not to mention that the South Vietnamese soldiers and horses were not enough to be called the strongest. On the second day of the first lunar month, the army marched to Yu Kingdom. King Yu, who had already received the news, had been waiting outside the city gate with his two sons and the ministers of the Yu Kingdom early. His attitude was very respectful, and the respect was mixed with some fear. After all, for the Dongling army that had just destroyed the non-Yu Kingdom, for example, even South Vietnam can be destroyed in a few months, and it is natural to want to annex a small Yu Kingdom. The cavalry trampled through the city, leaving Yuguo with no room for counterattack. It's freezing cold right now. The soldiers have worked hard. Please stay in Yu country for 2 days, so that I can host a banquet for you all. Xian Yuanyao turned over and dismounted, and greeted him with the courtesy of a military commander. Thank you King Yu for your kindness, but I have to rush back to resume my life, and I will bother you again when I have the opportunity. The general is mighty, King Yu said with humility and admiration. After this battle, the general became famous all over the world. In the future, other countries will have to weigh the strength of the Dongling cavalry. Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince Regent are indeed unparalleled. I really admire you. His flattery is very good. He not only praised Xian Yuanyao for his good military training, but also praised Dongling's national strength and military strength. He also praised Her Majesty the Queen and the Regent of Dongling. He praised her so much that no one knew how to be humble. Xian Yuanyao said calmly, Yu Guo's willingness to lend the road to Dongling is also an important factor in my general's victory. This time, when I return to resume my duties, all the generals have contributed. I, the hero of Yu Guo, will not forget it. Make a note in the merit book and let Her Majesty the Queen and the Regent reward King Yu. King Yu's expression paused slightly. As the king of a country, even though the national power and territory are far from being comparable to other big countries, he should have the most basic sense of smell. Listening to the words, Xian Yuanyao already regarded Yu country as a vassal country, or even more accurately, said that the Yu Kingdom has been included in the territory of Dongling. The word hero is enough to represent his attitude. But what can King Yu say? The Yu Kingdom is sandwiched between the two powerful countries of Dongling and South Vietnam. The situation was originally very delicate. Now that South Vietnam has been destroyed, the territory of South Vietnam has become the Dongling territory. The Yu Kingdom still wants to be independent from the imperial power within the Dongling territory. Outside, it's impossible even to think about. Surrendering is his only choice at the moment. It is enough that he can be treated kindly after surrendering, and he dare not even think about anything else. Thank you so much, General. King Yu smiled humbly. I also invite the general to come into the city to rest. I ordered a banquet for all the soldiers, so that they can have a hot meal to drive away the cold. Xian Yuanyao turned to look at Xiejin. What do you think? King Yu is so kind but disrespectful. Xiejin smiled faintly. In that case, just stay and rest for 1 day before going on the road. I don't care about these 2 days. Although it was important to hurry, the prisoners had to take a breather. Otherwise, most of them would be dead before they reached Tangling. It would be better to just cut them all off in South Vietnam. Xian Yuanyao nodded and said Wenyan to King Yu, in that case, I won't bother you. It's an honor to be alone. 10,000 Dongling cavalrymen stayed in Yu country for a day and were warmly entertained. The soldiers were placed in the military camp of Yu country to rest. The king and ministers of Nanyu took turns to eat and drink under strict supervision, and they were shackled when they slept at night. Stopping for a day to rest was to allow them to save their energy and continue to live, at least to arrive at Dongling alive, and hand over this stupid thing who always dared to covet Her Majesty the Queen to his master to deal with, and see if he could cut it into slices, pickle it, and dry it to send some to other kings of various countries to show his kindness. If this kind of thing is handed over to me, I will make sure I do it to the satisfaction of the master. Xiejin held a dagger. The blade was thin and sharp, and it emitted a cold light at night. I can guarantee that he will still be alive when the 200th knife falls. As he said, he shook his head and said, since I have been with Yao Yao, I feel that I have almost become a bodhisattva. I will not touch blood if I can, and I will never dare to let Yao Yao see my cruel side. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 844. Xian Yuanyao glanced at him. So, being with me is unfair to you. I dare not be wronged. Xiejin readily accepted the advice, and his tone was very natural. It was Yao Yao who saved me and made me a good person. Xian Yuanyao sneered, I dare not say that I am a good person, you are so shameless. Xiejin stretched out his hand and twisted his waist. Yao Yao, don't ruin my stage. Xian Yuanyao was about to take charge of the husband, but suddenly thought of Xiejin's kindness to him these days. Before, he was willing to sacrifice his body to appease his unhappy mood. His heart softened, and he could no longer say anything to him. Ajin Xian Yuanyao turned and walked to a deserted place. The night was more suitable for the two of them to walk. Another year has passed. When we return to the imperial capital, let's go back to Huainan together. Xiejin raised his eyebrows, take me to meet my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Xian Yuanyao glared at him, but rarely did he refute. In fact, he had acquiesced to Xiejin's self-proclaimed husband many days ago. They were both men, so there was no need to distinguish between husband and wife. It was meaningless to emphasize one's role blindly. Xian Yuanyao remembered every bit of Xiejin's kindness to him. Taking advantage verbally was actually just flirting. Even the so-called family rules were a bit relaxed and warm. Who really wanted to deliberately step on the other person? Xiejin really put him at the top of his heart. It was not a temporary interest or a novelty. No matter how slow he was, he could not fail to feel it. Xian Yuanyao never wanted to take advantage of others. Xiejin was very good to him, and he would definitely respond with great sincerity. He is honest and sincere, which is his attitude towards love. In fact, no matter whether it is a man or a woman, who doesn't want someone who treats him sincerely? Besides, Xian Yuanyao turned his head to look at Xiejin, his lips curled slightly, and he was such an outstanding man. How many girls in Dongling Imperial City dream of marrying him? What's wrong with Yao Yao? Xiejin raised his lips, a happy smile flashed across his eyes. Are you fascinated by my handsome face? Xian Yuanyao was embarrassed, but then nodded slowly, I am fascinated. Xiejin didn't expect him to be so frank, and was slightly stunned, and then the smile on his lips became more obvious. It is my honor to be in Yao Yao's eyes. Ajin Xian Yuanyao looked up at the night sky. After 10 or 8 years, we are all older, our appearance is no longer so young and outstanding, and our temperament is no longer so flamboyant and wanton. Feelings may be tempered by time, refined and faded. By then, if you want to marry, or fall in love with another beautiful boy, you must tell me honestly, don't hide it, okay? Xiejin frowned slightly. Yao Yao doesn't trust me so much. It's not distrust, but a prior agreement. Qian Yuan Yao turned to look at him, his eyes were particularly frank and clear, without any complicated emotions. Even if we don't have such a strong relationship now, we can still be best friends and confidants, and we can't let our feelings affect other things. You should understand what I mean. Xiejin naturally understood. At present, their feelings are pure and flawless, and their love for each other happened in the best years. One is handsome and passionate, and the other is upright and dazzling. But after 10 or 20 years, no one dares to guarantee that their feelings will still be as clean and pure as today. Even if this relationship goes smoothly, there are still many things they need to face in the future. As they get older, will they be moved when they see other men marrying and having children, and their children are in their arms? The two young men standing together are pleasing to the eye. 20 years later, can the feelings of the two middle-aged men still be so fearless of the world? They have been promoted step by step in the court, and have fought on the battlefield. They have faced more things, their minds have become deeper, and temptations are testing human nature day by day. They may no longer be as bright and flawless as they are now. By then, how much of their feelings will be left? Will they be suspicious? Can they withstand the temptation of money and beauty? Can they keep their original intentions? To be honest, even someone as thoughtful as Xiejin dare not guarantee that he will not change his heart, although now it seems that he firmly believes that he can be consistent. He even fully believes that Qian Yuanyao can also be loyal to his feelings. There are too many variables in the future. Trust can make each other feel at ease, but it is not impossible to guarantee absoluteness. Qian Yuanyao said this not because he did not trust enough, nor because he did not like her deeply enough, but because he used all his heart to pay, so he minimized the possible harm in the future in advance. It is precisely because they are too upright and principled, and have a strong sense of responsibility, that they have such concerns, so they want to agree on a result in advance. If one party changes his mind, they must try their best to ensure that in addition to feelings, it will not affect the results of each other's positions and responsibilities. 20 years later, if nothing unexpected happens, they will all be the pillars of the court, ministers and generals, and any decision they make may affect the livelihoods of thousands of people or the lives of soldiers. They cannot be swayed by personal emotions. Xiejin has a keen mind. How can he not understand Qian Yuanyao's meaning? Yao Yao, don't worry, he spoke, his voice was convincing and calm. My father has been in love with my mother for 20 years, and no other woman can catch his eye. Although my mother is a woman and cannot be compared with Yao Yao, I think I should be like my father in my bones, and it is at least no problem to be open and honest. Speaking of this, he smiled, isn't it the same for the king of Huainan? In terms of loyalty, most sons take after their fathers. The only difference between us and them is gender. I don't think this is a problem. However, even if I believe that we can still be as close as gold in 20 years, I can still make a promise at this time. If I really change my mind in the future, I will tell Yao Yao truthfully and honestly, never lie, and never affect anything other than feelings. Qian Yuanyao didn't say anything, but silently hooked Xiejin's hand. Xiejin lowered his eyes and looked at him, with a soft smile on his lips. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 845. The South Vietnamese emperor and his weird daughter were having a fuss at night. Sometimes they slept uncomfortably, sometimes they wanted someone to give them another blanket, and sometimes they didn't eat well. In short, they made a lot of requests, but no one paid him any attention. Although compared to the once luxurious and luxurious palace life, it is really the difference between heaven and hell now, but who allows them to commit suicide? Even if you live a good life, you are still not satisfied with having a great country and a vast territory. Now you can only bring it upon yourself. They only rested in Yu Kingdom for one day, and reorganized their army early the next morning. King Yu, along with the second and third princes and the ministers of Yu Kingdom, sent them all the way to the outside of the royal city. The mighty army accelerated and marched for another half-month. They didn't arrive at Dongling Imperial City until the morning of the Lantern Festival on the 15th day of the first lunar month. 10,000 cavalry were stationed outside the city. Xian Yuanyao and Xie Jin entered the palace alone to meet the saint. In the early morning, many people in the city had gotten up to work. The horses galloped through the streets of the imperial city and headed towards the palace. Nan 11 and Rong Yu are going to court. When a high-pitched and energetic shout sounded outside the palace, Prince Yao, Mr. Xie has come to see you. The civil and military officials in the main hall fell silent for a moment. The heroes are back, Nan 11 smiled faintly. Invite them into the palace. The chamberlain conveyed the order, and then he saw two young men in military uniforms walking into the hall, with tall and majestic postures, and a more heroic look on their brows. My minister Xian Yuanyao, Xie Jin, pays homage to Her Majesty the Queen. Long live, long live, long live. Kowtow to the regent, may I live 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years. Nan 11 looked at the two people in the hall, with a hint of smile on her face. Prince Yao is indeed a master in using troops and strategizing. In just a few months, South Vietnam was completely defeated. I am very relieved. Xian Yuanyao felt a little guilty and said humbly, reporting to Your Majesty, I should not be criticized for managing troops like a god. It is true that the South Vietnamese army is too weak, and I am lucky. Sure enough, a hero comes from a boy. Prince Yao is too humble, but there is nothing wrong with a young man being humble. There will be room for greater excellence in the future. Your Majesty and the regent are indeed right. Crown Prince Yao's character is truly top-notch. Compared with his military exploits, his humility, courtesy, and neither arrogance nor impatience are even more valuable. Xian Yuanyao lowered his eyebrows slightly, listening to the compliments from the ministers. He secretly thought that he had stayed with Xie Jin for a long time, and he had developed a thick skin. Otherwise, he would really be praised and praised like this. I dare not accept it calmly. Ping Shen Nan 11 said warmly, give me a seat. Give me a seat? The ministers fell silent. It is unprecedented for such a pair of young people to be given seats in the main hall. In the past, only respected veterans could have this honor. I don't dare. Xian Yuanyao quickly lowered his head, I absolutely don't dare. Thanks to Her Majesty the Queen for your grace, I can just stand. Xie Jin didn't say anything, but stood quietly beside Xian Yuanyao. Prince Yao has made great achievements in the conquest of South Vietnam. Starting today, he will be granted the title of General of Hussars and will be given a general palace, Nan 11 said, turning to look at Rong Yu, which house in the imperial city is more suitable for Xian Yuanyao. Rong Yu sat on one side and thought for a moment after hearing the words, the Su family's house is not small in size, but it is suitable. Xie Jin's eyebrows moved slightly. The Su family's house was indeed quite big, and it was not far from the Xie family. In that case, Master Mo Nan 11 turned to look at the ministers. Later, the Ministry of Industry sent someone to unseal the Su family's house and take good care of it, and repair it according to the requirements of Prince Yao, strive to complete it as soon as possible so that General Hussar can move in as soon as possible. I obey the decree. Xie Jin has worked hard to transport grain and grass all the way. Nan 11 smiled lightly, Today is the Lantern Festival. I will let you two rest for a day and take the Nanyu monarchs and ministers to the prison first. You two and all the generals under your command will go to the palace tomorrow to report on your duties. I will organize a cleansing banquet for you, and all the meritorious ministers will be rewarded. I obey your orders. Xiejin bowed and thank you for your grace. Xian Yuanyao lowered his head and asked, Your Majesty, don't you want to meet the Emperor of South Vietnam? Why are you seeing him? Nan 11 smiled lightly, lock him up first. There is no need to see him as the king of subjugation. We will wait until the regent decides how to deal with him later. Yes, Xian Yuanyao agreed. The Emperor of Nanyu also has a 12-year-old daughter who is unruly and willful, arrogant and domineering, with a violent temper. How does your Majesty think we should deal with it? 12 years old, Nan 11 pondered. She's not that old, so she should be locked up first. Yes. The two quickly retreated. After a long journey back to the imperial capital, not only the two of them, but everyone was tired. The most important thing right now was to send the South Vietnamese prisoners to the prison, let the soldiers disperse and go back to rest, see their families, reunite with their wives, children, and take a good bath. Take a bath and have a meal. Everything else can be left for tomorrow. Xie Xiaofu stroked his chin, silently watching the steady and tall backs of the two young people, and nodded secretly. Yes, you can clearly see the growth of the two of them every time they accomplish a big thing. They are neither arrogant nor impetuous, nor shocked by honor or disgrace. There is no reason. He is arrogant when he makes meritorious deeds, and he is not overjoyed by rewards. It is rare for young people to have such determination. The First World War in South Vietnam has completely enhanced Tanglin's reputation. Let's see if other countries dare to provoke provocations in the future. As soon as the Dongling Iron Cavalry came out, even the powerful country of South Vietnam was wiped out. From now on, kings of all countries must weigh their words carefully, otherwise they will end up like South Vietnam. Prince Yao is worthy of being the son of King Huainan. It is true that a tiger father has no dog son. The most important thing is that the regent is good at employing people, and the monarch and his subjects trust him, which makes people worry-free. Mr. Xie is not bad either. He has perfectly inherited the intelligence and steadiness of Mr. Xie. Since he entered the court, he has really undergone a complete transformation compared to the past. Prince Yao and Mr. Xie are really a perfect match. They are both outstanding and brilliant. Prime Minister Xie silently looked at his colleagues in the court and listened to them start to flatter him unscrupulously. He couldn't help but say, I heard that you all impeached my son and Prince Yao for bringing bad habits. How can they be a perfect match? The ministers were choked and looked embarrassed. Prime Minister Xie smiled and said, facts have proved that two excellent people together will only be more excellent, and they will not bring about any bad atmosphere. Do you admit it? The ministers nodded. Prime Minister is right, it is us who are narrow-minded. You are not narrow-minded, but we are temporarily bound by the thoughts of the sages. Of course, it is our duty as scholars to follow the way of sages, and we should abide by it, but rules are dead, people are alive, and it is okay to make occasional changes. As long as we stick to the bottom line and principles, do not violate the laws and regulations, and do not set a bad example, then we can be tolerant occasionally. Prime Minister is right. We are ashamed. Nan 11's mouth twitched slightly. I don't know how Xian Yuanyao and Xiejing came back, and the court hall turned into a flattery meeting. If there is nothing else, let's adjourn for the time being. Wrong, you said. Prime Minister Xie and Prime Minister Lu will go to the Kinzen Hall to discuss matters with me later, and everyone else will disperse. After speaking, he stood up and stretched out his hand to Nan 11. Nan 11 put her hand into his, then turned and left as the ministers kowtowed and bid farewell to her. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 846. After the fall of South Vietnam, there were many things to deal with. Tell the world that the territory of South Vietnam would belong to Dongling from now on. Issue edicts to rectify the military forces in various cities in South Vietnam, appoint officials of all sizes in the prefectures and cities, and deal with the monarchs, ministers, clansmen, concubines, and defeated troops of South Vietnam. General, appease the people of South Vietnam. There are many follow-up matters, which are not only numerous but also complicated. It is necessary to convene the cabinet ministers to discuss for a few days and formulate a detailed plan. It is also destined that in the next days, Rong Yu, Nan 11 and all the central ministers in the court will have to deal with the matter again. It'll take a while. But today is the Lantern Festival. For Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao, who had not been able to spend New Year's Eve at home, it was a day to relax. The two arranged enough manpower to send the South Vietnamese monarchs and ministers to Tien Lao to lock them up, so that they could return to the city. The 10,000 cavalrymen were disbanded in an orderly manner and went back to their homes to reunite with their wives, children, and mothers, and have a good reunion dinner. Xian Yuanyao arrived at Jinyuan with Xiejin. The servants came forward to serve him with tea, wash basins, and towels. Others were responsible for fetching water, preparing clothes, and preparing hot water for the two masters to wash and bathe. After all this hard work, half a day passed quickly. After lunch, the two stayed in the room and slept in the dark. They did nothing, just slept until dusk. Xian Yuanyao woke Xiejin up by kissing the sleeping beauty. Ajin, a soft voice sounded in his ears, "It's getting late. Did you say you forgot to go out for the Lantern Festival later?" "I haven't forgotten." Xiejin opened his eyes, and the eyes of the powerful minister and young master who had just woken up flashed with a gloomy look, "but I haven't slept enough yet, I'm too tired." "What?" Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. Xieju, who is as skilled as a top master, suddenly turned into a delicate young master Jingxiu. "As a husband, you will be strong when you are strong." Xiejin smiled, raised his hand and rubbed his eyes. "The damned people in South Vietnam are dead, and everyone who deserves to be killed has been killed. Now is the time to pretend to be weak. Why am I still so strong? Your Majesty has a day off today. I guess it's because of the Lantern Festival that he wants us to go out and play." Xian Yuanyao pinched his face and said, "Get up quickly." Xiejin hummed, "You serve me." Xian Yuanyao's eyebrows raised, "I have just been granted the title of General of Hussars by your Majesty, with the rank of first rank. How dare you ask me to serve you?" Xiejin glanced at him sideways. Is Yao Yao trying to use his power to suppress others? Suppress others with military merit? Xian Yuanyao pressed his whole body on top of him. "From now on, if I am on top and you are on the bottom, this general will make it impossible for you to stand up for the rest of your life." "Yao Yao, don't be like this, otherwise my husband will be very sad." Xiejin sighed, quite melancholy. "I, a small third-rank official, cannot be as powerful as a first-rank general. It seems that people who handle cases in the court are still slow to get promoted. It's better to fight a battle and soar into the sky. I'm going to attack you." Xian Yuanyao straightened up and pointed at his forehead with his finger. "My prince and his subordinates have sacrificed their lives to gain military merit. You didn't just use your brain to solve the case. You don't know who worked hard. Yao Yao and the soldiers have worked hard." Xiejin hugged his neck and spoke softly, "Not only can you bleed and get injured at any time on the battlefield, but the training in daily life is also more difficult than ordinary people can bear." "I was just teasing you." Xian Yuanyao hummed, "I'm teasing you too." "So we are teasing each other." Xiejin stood up and started to get dressed and wash up. "Do you still have dinner? Let's go out to eat. There are many delicious snacks at the Lantern Festival, although they are not as rich and clean as those cooked by the cook at home. But the best thing is the experience, the feeling is different." I'm free to do it. So the two of them washed up neatly, changed their clothes and went out to visit the Lantern Festival. Rong Yu, who was staying in the palace, was also seeking Nan 11's opinion and wanted to take her out for a walk, but Nan 11 was not very interested in this. We won't go, let's handle the matter earlier and let Xiejin He Xian Yuan Yao is so fun. The Lantern Festival happens every year, and with Rong Yu here, Nan 11, the queen, can almost go to the palace immediately. The palace rules have no effect on them. Now that the children are growing up, Nan 11 is very interested in the Lantern Festival. My youngest daughter's family is no longer too keen on festivals. We have seen the best prosperous scenery in the world, and experienced the romance. The best man belongs to me, and the best child is born to me. Nan 11 rested on Rong Yu's lap, her voice was soft. Wanli Zhongshan, we have it, the power and glory are in our hands, and no one has a more perfect life than me. South Vietnam has a large territory. It has 4 provinces, 9 states, and 27 cities. It needs a lot of officials. Nan 11 pondered, I think we can open more Ankh this year in the name of the world. South Vietnamese students can also participate. Tangling, Nanyu treating everyone equally requires building a sense of identity for Tanglin among the South Vietnamese people in the shortest possible time. Rong Yu gently stroked her hair. In addition to Ankh, we can also hold a martial arts competition. People from Dongling and South Vietnam can sign up. Those with strong physical strength and good skills will be appointed as generals in each state and city based on their comprehensive abilities. Yes, Nan 11 nodded lightly. If you want to be strong in the world, you must have strong soldiers and horses. This is never wrong. After a pause, however, when appointing generals, Dongling must be given priority. Firstly, Dongling has strong soldiers and horses and many capable people. Secondly, those who hold military power must be trusted by themselves. As time goes by, South Vietnam will have a counter-attack against Dongling. If you can no longer regard yourself as a South Vietnamese citizen, you can use South Vietnamese capable generals. Your Majesty is wise. Rong Yu smiled, I think so too, but the South Vietnamese generals are not completely unusable. Some who have outstanding performance in the military and are upright and reliable can be appointed first, starting with lower-level generals. Get up to show your Majesty's kindness. Nan 11 raised her eyes and looked at him with a smile. Suddenly, she raised her hands to hook his neck and pulled him down, and pecked him on the li. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 847. The night of the Lantern Festival is very lively. Many young men and girls like to go out and watch the lanterns on this day. This is also the most rare romantic festival of the year. The streets are bustling with people, and lanterns of various shapes are hung on both sides of the streets, making the whole street bright and noisy. The festive and lively atmosphere of the festival is undoubtedly evident on the faces of everyone holding lanterns. Most of the people who come out to join in the fun are young girls. Even if there are men, most of them do it to make their sweetheart happy or take the opportunity to express their friendship. Xian Yuanyao wore a moon-white brocade robe and a thick white piping cloak, which made his appearance look handsome and noble, like the bright and flawless noble prince who walked out of the painting, or the young general who charged on the battlefield a few days ago. Almost completely different. Not to mention Xiejin beside him. All the words used to describe Pianji's young master can't be exaggerated when applied to him, so bright, delicate and shining. Yao Yao said this as if the husband was not just trying to please his sweetheart. Xiejin reached out and took his hand from under the cloak. In the bustling crowd, no one noticed his intimate action, just now coming back from a battlefield littered with corpses, and coincidentally encountering this lantern festival. Two completely different environments will bring the greatest impact on people's soul. With a gentle smile on his lips, he said warmly, can this lively scene in front of us wipe away the smell of blood that remains on our bodies? Xian Yuanyao walked along the long street with him. Occasionally, when a woman passed by, he couldn't help but look at them twice, and then showed a look of surprise and shyness. However, Xian Yuanyao and Xie Jin both looked at each other intently, turning a blind eye to those admiring and shy eyes. Along the way, there was nothing overly ignorant. I always feel uncomfortable. Xian Yuanyao's right hand was held by Xie Jin. He raised his left hand and tugged on the cloak on his body. Obviously he is a majestic military commander, but now he feels like he will be knocked down by the wind. Like a sick man. Strong or delicate, each has its own style. Xie Jin whispered into his ear with a bewitching voice, "My husband has personally experienced Yao Yao's strength. There is no need to emphasize it again. It's so cold in winter, so we should still it's better to dress appropriately for the occasion." Practicing it personally. Xian Yuanyao understood instantly, raised his hand, twisted his waist and turned him half a circle, but his voice was gentle and graceful. "Ajin, you should still have the shame taught by ancient sages." Xie Jin curled his lips happily. "We have done so many shameless things, why do we still care about this little shame?" "Shut up. You two gentlemen, do you want to buy a lantern?" An old man buying a lantern not far away said with a smile, "Tonight is the lantern festival. Beautiful women from all the houses on this long street will come to shop, holding lanterns. See you later. You can give it to the girl who is attracted to you and express your feelings euphemistically and implicitly." Xie Jin and Xian Yuanyao stopped and took a look. There were all kinds of shapes. "Yao Yao, what do you like?" Xian Yuanyao gave him a strange look. "You want to buy it?" Two grown men were shopping with lanterns in their hands. "Don't you think it's weird?" Xie Jin nodded and turned to look at the old man. "How do you sell this?" "These lanterns made by the old man are displayed. If you want to make them yourself, you can do it yourself," the old man said with a smile. "Made by hand, it shows more sincerity. Girls all like rabbit-shaped ones. They look cuter. Rabbits, a lantern costs 15 cents, which one do you want?" "I'll make a lantern for Yao Yao." Xie Jin turned to look at Xian Yuanyao. "What shape does Yao Yao want? Rabbit or tiger?" The old man was confused and looked at Xie Jin and Xian Yuanyao with confused eyes. "Who is Yao Yao? Which girl's nickname?" Xian Yuanyao frowned. He really didn't want to walk down the street like a fool carrying a lantern, so he said, "I see there is a pot-throwing game ahead. Do you want to watch the fun?" Seeing that he was about to leave, the old man smiled quickly and said, "This young man buys a lantern for the girl. Don't rush me, how about you buy one too?" "He has a wife," Xian Yuanyao said lightly. "If you dare to give it to a girl, you will have to kneel down on the washboard when you go back." "Ah!" The old man was stunned and looked at Xie Jin. "Is the young master married?" Xie Jin raised the corners of his mouth slightly and nodded slowly. "Well, if you're kind enough, you can buy one to give to your lovely wife dash. His beloved wife is me." Xian Yuanyao seemed to be risking his life, and kept saying it without surprising, "I don't like rabbit lanterns." The old man was stunned. "What? Not only do I dislike rabbit lanterns, I also don't like tigers, leopards, foxes, I don't like any lanterns." Xian Yuanyao said calmly, holding Xie Jin's hand and leaving, "Let's throw the pot." Xie Jin was dragged away by him and secretly gave the old man a piece of silver. He couldn't help but smile proudly, especially the sentence "his beloved wife is me" was simply the biggest surprise tonight. It made his bones go numb. The old man selling lanterns stared blankly at the backs of the two people leaving. He didn't know what he suddenly thought of. He was startled and murmured to himself, could they be the legitimate son of the Xie family and the king of Huainan who caused such a fuss this year, Prince? Thinking of this, he lowered his head and stared at the scraps of silver in his hand that could buy dozens of lanterns. "It's so generous, they must be right. I didn't expect that I would meet these two people tonight. Although the love of the cut sleeve is a bit unconventional, the two young men are both the best among men, and they look really good together." Thinking again, the old man frowned. They shouldn't be together, two men, it would be better if each of them had a girl to accompany them. Old man, what are you mumbling about here alone? A woman came over and looked at him fiercely. Are you bewitched by some little goblin? What nonsense are you talking about, old woman? The old man glared at her. Just now, two handsome young men came to see the lanterns. They are so handsome, and they are outstanding. It's a pity. What a pity. It's a pity that the young man has a boyfriend. The old man shook his head, quite melancholy. No, of course, we can also match him up as our grandson-in-law. You're just dreaming. The woman laughed foolishly. How can a handsome and talented nobleman like your granddaughter? Don't you allow me to fantasize about it, the old man said. Besides, my granddaughter is still young, not yet at the age of marriage. The two of them were arguing with each other, but Xian Yuanyao and Xie Jin had already walked away. Every time they passed a stall selling lanterns, there were always people smiling and asking them to buy 2 lanterns for the girl, but Xie Jin refused without exception, and walked slowly on the long street with Xian Yuanyao, enjoying the romantic tenderness after the iron hoofs. One love word is enough. If you say more, you may really have to kneel on the washboard tonight. His wife is me. Tisk tisk, just 6 short words, it really goes deep into people's hearts, even hard bones can't help but soften. The night is so beautiful. Xie Jin looked up at the sky. The prosperous Dongling imperial city is even more beautiful. Xian Yuanyao looked up along his line of sight, with longing in his eyes. When the 9 states belong to Dongling, the scenery of the imperial capital should be more beautiful, right? The 9 states belong to Dongling? Xie Jin was silent for a moment, tilted his head and stared at his gentle eyebrows. We should be able to see such a prosperous era in our lifetime. Yes, Xian Yuanyao nodded. Yes. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 848. Captivated by a sentence, Mr. Xie lost interest in the Lantern Festival as he strolled around. Even though the scenery in front of him was so prosperous and noisy, he still felt that the features of the person next to him were the most attractive. In fact, he and Yao Yao don't need to be so romantic at all. They can just wash themselves off and cultivate their relationship in bed at night. Sweating more in winter is good for physical and mental health. Why do they need to come out to join in the excitement of this Lantern Festival? Didn't you see that the people who go to the Lantern Festival are all little girls who haven't left the country? Yao Yao Xie Jin said in a leisurely voice, we can barely be considered an old couple. Xian Yuanyao's expression paused. I'm still very young. Well, Yao Yao is still very young. Xie Jin tilted his head and reached out to pinch his firm and elastic cheeks. You are in your prime, and you are an unparalleled young master. Xian Yuanyao accepted it calmly. This is the truth. Xie Jin laughed. Let's go back. Go back. Xian Yuanyao looked at the long market. We haven't finished shopping yet. Didn't Yao Yao just say that you are my little wife? Xie Jin held his hand, turned and walked back. I want to go back to fulfill my duties as a husband and love Yao Yao well. The corner of Xian Yuanyao's mouth twitched. She couldn't bear the colored thoughts in his mind. Why are you so? Huh? Xie Jin tilted his head. Yao Yao doesn't like it? Xian Yuanyao was instantly choked. Well, he liked it too. Xian Yuanyao felt that he was completely led astray by Xie Jin. He spoke righteously. Xie Jin. Yeah, I'm here. I think we should exercise restraint, Xian Yuanyao said seriously. The ancient sage said. I, a civil servant, don't keep talking about the words of the ancient sage all day long. How can a general like Yao Yao be so pedantic? Xie Jin sighed. Life is short, we have to enjoy ourselves in time, and we have not affected others. Besides, even if no matter how much Yao Yao cried at night, it didn't delay the day's work, right? Xian Yuanyao. When Yao Yao was cruel, he didn't care about the warnings of the ancient saints. Xie Jin leaned against his ear, and his hot breath lingered in Xian Yuanyao's ears, making people itch unbearably. The innocent little leopard is gone and will never come back. Yao Yao is also a wolf addicted to eating meat. Xian Yuan Yao stretched out his hand and pinched the flesh around his waist. From now on, you are not allowed to say dirty words in public. If you want to say it, you can only say it in bed. Xiejin chuckled, they can't hear it? That won't work either, Xian Yuan Yao said fiercely, you must understand etiquette, justice, and integrity, otherwise I will let you taste the taste of family law. The smile on Xiejin's lips deepened, I obey, my dear wife. Xian Yuan Yao's expression condensed and he glared at him fiercely. The quarrel was a quarrel, but Xian Yuan Yao couldn't resist Xiejin's urge to go back to eat meat in the end. The two of them only walked around for less than half an hour before heading back home, which made the servants in Jinyuan extremely surprised. Didn't the young master and the prince go out to see the lanterns? Why did they come back so soon? Tonight's lantern festival is very lively. In addition to many beautiful people, there are also many interesting and fun projects. There is nothing to go shopping for, Xiejin said calmly. The lantern festival was mostly filled with beauties who had not yet left the palace. Yao Yao and I were so good looking that we were afraid of arousing the attention of the little girls, so we came back early. The servants were accustomed to their master's proud and narcissistic tone. They just smiled secretly and quickly came forward to serve him. Prepare some simple hot food, Xiejin ordered, not too greasy, just a little light. Yes. Xiejin sighed, I originally planned to take Yao Yao out to eat, but I didn't expect. Xian Yuan Yao responded with a sneer. What's Yao Yao's expression? Xiejin walked over and kissed him on the face. When you are with the person you like, you can't help but want to do something more pleasant. This is human nature. After a pause, isn't Yao Yao enjoying it too? Xian Yuan Yao was speechless and panicked. He felt that he had been led astray by Xiejin. He actually thought that it was normal for those degrading things to happen to them, and the feeling was indeed wonderful and unstoppable. But you can't indulge him like this, otherwise it will be too lawless. Xian Yuan Yao frowned, can you do all the things you enjoy doing without restraint? It's not too unrestrained, Xiejin thought for a while and replied seriously, at least we only do it at night and rarely during the day. So he's really restrained. You still think there are too few days? Xian Yuan Yao's eyes were full of shock. Are you planning to stay in bed at 12 hours a day? Xiejin coughed lightly, if the Lord can give us a holiday, I think it would be good. It would even save time on taking off and dressing up. Xian Yuan Yao. What kind of thing does he like? Half an hour later, the servants served several freshly cooked dishes one after another. Xiejin and Xian Yuan Yao stopped bickering and sat at the table to have a quiet and warm dinner. After dinner, I drank a cup of tea and rested for a while to gather my emotions. Then I naturally moved to the bed in the inner room, lowered the bed curtains, and naturally began the intense, indescribable, and shameless evening exercise. 10,000 words are omitted here. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 849. The next morning, the two of them went into the palace to report on their duties. Xian Yuan Yao got up late, and several of his generals arrived at the palace gate early. They waited until the sun was almost reaching their heads before they saw Xian Yuan Yao and Xiejin coming in a carriage. All the generals greeted him respectfully. Jin Jun looked at Xian Yuan Yao's face, raised his eyebrows and said, General, did you become a thief last night? That is to say, if a general in the army dares to tease his own general like this, of course, it must be in a military camp or outside the battlefield. During training, he was trained like a turtle grandson and would never dare to say a word. He went to become a flower picker, Xian Yuan Yao replied casually, and then gave a stern warning, when you enter the palace later to meet the saint, be respectful. Say what you should say, but don't say what you shouldn't. Don't look around. You guys. I'm here to receive military merit, so don't get yourself a imperial staff. His voice was a little hoarse, not as clear as usual. Several generals looked at each other for a moment, and then Yunjong said, "General, you are worrying too much. We are not bumpkin from the countryside. We still understand the rules of meeting a saint." Yang Ting said, "General, don't worry, we are all rough men on the battlefield, and our eyes may not be very good when wielding swords and guns, but when we enter the palace, we must stay safe and abide by the ways of monarchs and ministers. When we kneel down, our eyes will only look at our own tiptoe, never dash." "You shouldn't be able to see your toes when you kneel down," Jin Jun interrupted. "I can only look at the floor tiles and my knees." Yang Ting was silent for a moment. "You know." Yao Yao Xiejin looked at Xian Yuanyao slowly. "Your men are all cute." Cute. The expressions of several generals suddenly changed, and they all looked at young Master Xie. How could they be so cute? Xiejin must be scolding them. Praising a little girl for being cute is a real compliment, but praising a group of big and powerful military generals for being cute is absolutely ironic. However, Xiejin didn't care about their looks and entered the palace gate with Xian Yuanyao, followed by several people behind him. The group quickly entered the Kinzen Hall. In fact, Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao calculated their time. Although getting up late was also a reason, it was mainly because they did not need to enter the palace too early to report their duties. They had to wait until Her Majesty the Queen and the Regent went to court before they could see them. Of course, there is a bit of pride in this. If he were an ordinary official, he would definitely get up early, straighten his crown and girdle, enter the palace before dawn, arrive at the Kinzen Hall and wait, even if it takes 2 hours, so that he can show his duty as a courtier and his humility and respect. However, Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao have always been very obedient in front of the regent, but they are not particularly strict in observing some negligible etiquette. Probably this is what it feels like when there is someone in the court. Rong Yu went down to the morning early today. Because some important things recently were related to South Vietnam, he only needed to summon a few important cabinet ministers to discuss it in the Kinzen Hall. So Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao didn't wait long in the side hall. "Go outside and shout, 'Her Majesty the Queen has arrived. The Prince Regent has arrived'." Xian Yuanyao and Xiejin walked out of the side hall, straightened their robes, and respectfully knelt down to pay homage. "See Your Majesty the Emperor, see the Regent, long live, long live, long live." The generals were indeed very calm. After bowing to Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao, they knelt quietly behind them without raising their heads or moving their bodies. They just kept kneeling in the most standard posture. Nan 11 and Rong Yu walked in and raised their hands to signal the others to get up. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao stood up. Seeing that the others did not move, Xian Yuanyao raised his foot and kicked the legs of Jin Jun, Yunjong, and Yang Ting one by one. Jin Jun looked up in confusion and saw his general's frowning expression. He was thinking about it when he heard a cold and majestic voice, "Ping Shen." Oh! Only then did the three of them understand and stood up in silence. The rules in the palace are different from those in the military camp. It never hurts to be careful. It is said that it is not strange to be polite to many people. In front of the emperor, the more polite the better, at least it is safer than accidentally offending the emperor. Regarding the placement and reorganization of the South Vietnamese soldiers and horses, the regent and I convened the ministers last night to discuss preliminary plans. Nan 11 handed a file to Xian Yuanyao. "General, take a look and see if you have any suggestions to add." It was the first time that Xian Yuanyao heard the title general from Nan 11. He felt a little awkward, but he still took the file respectfully and looked through it with Xiejin. "I thought that the decision-making of His Majesty and the Regent must be perfect. Yes, I don't think I need to add anything." Rong Yu raised her eyes and glanced at him. Xian Yuanyao lowered his eyebrows and said, "I am definitely not trying to flatter you, I am telling the truth." Nan 11 laughed, After all, the general personally led the troops to destroy the South Vietnamese. He saw and heard a lot along the way. He knows more about South Vietnam than I and the regent do, so your suggestions are also very important. Xian Yuanyao suddenly felt stressed. After thinking for a while, he said, the top priority should be to adjust the troops and horses at the Huainan border and cancel the garrison of all border troops and horses in South Vietnam and Dongling, so that South Vietnam and Dongling can truly become one. However, within South Vietnam the troops in each state and city must be garrisoned by generals whom Dongling can trust, and the South Vietnamese generals will temporarily command the military power. The remnants of South Vietnam cannot be allowed to gather troops and cause trouble. Nan 11 hummed, is there more? Xian Yuanyao wondered if Her Majesty the Queen had deliberately tested him, but now he was clearly past the age to be considered as a student. Xian Yuanyao sighed silently and continued, officials in various states and cities had better choose some smart, strong, and adaptable ministers, but you must have a tolerant temperament and know how to be considerate of the people. Only in this way can you establish your authority in the shortest time and become a trusted official of the South Vietnamese people. Only by gaining the trust of the people and eliminating their fear and anxiety of being subjugated slaves can they develop a sense of identification with Dongling as soon as possible. Nan 11 asked a few more questions, all about the deployment of South Vietnamese troops and the governance of states and cities. Xian Yuanyao answered one by one, seriously and methodically. The general's contribution to this expedition to South Vietnam was indispensable. The rewards he deserved were awarded in the palace yesterday. I and the regent have also seen the list of meritorious officials you reported. Nan 11 took a list of rewards and said, this is the reward that I and the regent have worked out to give to the soldiers of the two armies. You can see if there is anything you need to add. If you have any additional requirements, you can also put them forward and I will consider them. Xian Yuanyao took the book and looked through it. The reward items were all in the book. In addition to all the generals with high rank in the army being promoted to one level, they were also rewarded with gold, silver, grain, cloth, military boots. Looking further down, all the soldiers who went out to fight were each rewarded with 10 taels of silver, 1 stone of grain, and 1 bolt of cloth. Those who were far away from home and unable to reunite with their relatives could exchange the grain and cloth for silver and save them for later when they return home. Take it home together with your wife, children, and mother. To be honest, this reward is generous enough even for a well-trained Iron Knight. The lieutenants of the army eat and live in the military camp. Their food, clothing, and housing are all provided by the court. They don't need the money at all. They save all the military pay they receive in their hands on weekdays. If they are close to home, they can ask someone they trust to bring it back to them. If your home is far away, you can only save it yourself first. The Black Obsidian Army and the Golden Armor Army have made such great contributions in their first battle with Xian Yuanyao. They must be rewarded, but... General, do you have something to say? Nan 11's voice was calm, just say what you want to say, don't worry. Xian Yuanyao lowered his head and said, if such reward standards become the norm, the national treasury may be tight. War inherently consumes a lot of money. Military pay, food and fodder, war horses and armor, spears and weapons, and all kinds of equipment cost money. Rewards will be given after meritorious service. A military camp can range from tens of thousands to as many as 200,000 to 300,000 horses. Each person has 10,000 soldiers. 2 taels of silver, this time 600,000 taels of silver had to be allocated from the treasury, not including food and cloth. After calculating this, Xian Yuanyao felt his scalp tightening. Then do you think it will cost more to fight the war for 2 years or to reward the soldiers? Xian Yuanyao was slightly stunned. If it really lasts for 2 years, it will cost a lot of money and the national treasury will be even tighter. That's enough. Nan 11 smiled faintly, since it is a reward, it is natural to make the soldiers happy, so that it can have a motivating effect. Feeling the king's respect and trust, they will be more willing to endure the hardships during training. If you have the motivation to persevere, you will get twice the result with half the effort, and when you go to the battlefield, you can greatly shorten the time it takes to conquer the territory. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 850. Xian Yuanyao immediately understood what she meant. In the future, the training of soldiers and horses can adopt an incentive selection system. The regent will explain this to you in detail later, so I won't go into details for now. Nan 11 said in a calm tone, soldiers work hard to kill the enemy on the battlefield, and they are always faced with the fate of being shrouded in horse leather. I don't want to see this, so I hope that all the soldiers who go to the battlefield will win and return intact. Xian Yuanyao lowered his head. Yes. Swords are ruthless, and tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of soldiers and horses are fighting. Death is inevitable. If you want to reduce casualties, you can only train your troops continuously and build your soldiers into an invincible king's army. Only in this way can you remain invincible. The scenery is back. Nan 11's voice was calm and gentle, but the generals present couldn't help but feel powerful. All soldiers who can endure the hardships of training are qualified to receive generous military pay. Jin Jun, Yun Zhang, and Yang Ting, who stood silently and respectfully, had shocked expressions. They could hardly believe that these words were spoken by a gentle Her Majesty the Queen. She was calm, gentle, and calm, but every word made them feel a surge of emotion from the bottom of their hearts. Shocking atmosphere. Xian Yuanyao bowed and said, Her Majesty the Queen has unparalleled sage and wisdom, I admire you greatly. I'm not that powerful. Nan 11 laughed. I just proposed a feasible plan after discussing with the regent. I'm just talking about it, but the actual implementation still depends on the generals. You are the ones who deserve the merit. The generals bowed with humility and said, I dare not take credit. I'm a little tired. You can discuss matters on the battlefield with the regent. Nan 11 stood up. While the military success is still hot, if you have any requests that you usually want to make but don't dare to make, you can try to ask them now. Regent TT, it doesn't matter if you can't be satisfied, you won't be punished anyway. After saying this, she walked out with Yunyu and Chu Hong'ai, followed by a group of palace people. Everyone in the palace bowed respectfully. Several generals who followed Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao secretly thought that Her Majesty the Queen was not that scary. Are their generals too cautious? You are not allowed to raise your head and glance around, you are not allowed to move, you are not allowed to do this or that. As a result, Her Majesty the Queen turns out to be so amiable and considerate of the soldiers, and she is much broader-minded than many men. Jin Jun, Yang Ting, Yun Zhang. The three people whose names were called looked solemn and knelt down on one knee. The general is here. No need to be polite. Wrong. You glanced at the three of them, you all performed very well during the South Vietnam War. The three of them shouted loudly, Thank you, Prince Regent. This is a matter that will be divided among the generals. Xian Yuanyao frowned and turned to glare at the three of them. Why are you shouting so loudly? Xiejin raised his lips and smiled lightly. They are probably worried that the regent won't hear. The three of them were ashamed. The regent is not old enough, so why can't he hear? They were just too excited and couldn't hold back their excitement. I have mentioned to Xian Yuanyao about the formation of the Boy Scouts before, and the plan can be implemented this year. Wrong. You said in a calm voice, the recruitment will start next month, and we will first recruit from Dongling territory to help poor families with many children. First, the age will be controlled between 10 and 13, and 20,000 people will be recruited first, and the training period will be extended to 5 years. Xian Yuanyao was silent for a while. My lord, this is the youth army, not the Boy Scouts. Rong Yu glanced at him expressionlessly. Xiejin also turned to look at him. Xian Yuanyao's expression suddenly became solemn, and he stood with his head lowered. The level of training is based on the Obsidian Army. Rong Yu continued, you will understand even if I don't mention the others. After all, I have experience, so it shouldn't be difficult. Xian Yuanyao nodded, it's not difficult, it just requires more worry. Although teenagers between the ages of 10 and 13 happen to be physically strong and flexible, they are no more stable and sensible than adults. Teenagers have the same temperament, and fights are common, so they always need to pay more attention. The three of you will be responsible for recruiting troops. Rong Yu's eyes fell on Yunjiang and the other three. Go back and make a detailed plan and submit it. You can write down any ideas and suggestions you have. As long as the plan is feasible, the king will consider it. Yes. This is the initial plan. You can go back first. The rewards from the Obsidian Army and the Golden Armor Army will be implemented within 3 days. Yes, thank you to Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince Regent for their kindness. The three of them saluted. I will leave at the end. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.